The SEC scheduling matrix is out. It's time for the current best conference in basketball to beat up on itself all over again.
You are Locked On College Basketball, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, happy Friday. What's up? Welcome into the Locked On College Basketball Podcast, the only daily national college hoop show out there. We're your host. This guy to my side is Mr. Andy Patton. I'm Isaac Schade, and you're joining us at the place to get your college basketball content every single day. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We want to thank you for making us your first listen or watch to get your college basketball content every day. I want to remind you that you can catch every episode ad-free on Amazon Music. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Special shout out to all the everydayers joining us and all the great members of the Locked On College Basketball Discord. We'd love to see you in there if you're not already. Andy, very similar show to last week. Last week about this time, we got the Big 12 scheduling matrix, just meaning conference opponents, who they're going to play, not the order or the dates or anything like that, but who the opponents are. Now, this week, we got that for the SEC. So we're basically just copy pasting, but with the SEC. So here's where we're going to go with it. The frame that we're using is we looked at Bart Torvik's preseason rankings for the SEC, and it divides nicely into a top 8 and bottom 8 because the top 8 are all in Torvik's top 30. The bottom 8 are all outside of that top 30. However, 14 of the 16 teams are all in the top 50. I think it's 13 of the top 16 are all in the top 40, Andy. So it's a relative bottom 8, but whatever, go with it. So we're going to look at the hardest and easiest schedules for that top 8. We'll look at that bottom 8. Again, it's a relative bottom, fat bottom girls. And Andy, see if there might be an interloper out of that bottom 8. And then we just want to take an initial look at, is there any world in which the SEC could duplicate what they did in the NCAA tournament last year, getting 14 in? And also last week, Andy had a little trivia for me. Now it's turnaround. I'm going to do it to him. I'm just going to call it Friday Facts, and we'll see if that sticks. So, Andy, let's dive right into this thing. The top 8 in the SEC at Torvik is Florida 5, Arkansas 10, Tennessee 12, Kentucky 13, Bama 19, Vandy 22, Mizzou 28, and Oklahoma 30. So that's your top 8. And yes, that means like Auburn is outside that top 8. So fine, whatever. But that's the framework we've chosen, and that's the framework we're going with. So, Andy, out of that top 8, would you, first off, explain to us kind of the makeup of the SEC schedule, and then tell us who you think has the hardest schedule of that top 8?
Yeah, like you said, we kind of copied and pasted for the Big 12 because the Big 12 sort of copy and pasted from the SEC in terms of scheduling. It's very, very similar. You got 6 for the SEC. They got 18 regular season games. They got 6 opponents that are only playing at home. They got 6 opponents that are only playing on the road. They got 3 teams that are playing both at home and on the road. That is literally exactly the same as how the Big 12 has laid it out for this year after scaling back from 20 conference games to 18. So for the SEC, for the purposes of this conversation, it is going to look very similar to that Big 12 conversation. League play for the SEC will start on Saturday, January 3rd. They are not one of the conferences that has kind of some of those intermittent conference games. And as sometimes as early December or mid-December, they wait till the start of the new year before they start their conference play. It'll run through Saturday, March 7th. And again, it's very similar schedule. So for me, looking at the toughest versus easiest, there's not an easy schedule in the SEC. I think that's a fairly obvious statement, but the team that stood out to me having one of the more tougher schedules among these top 8 programs is Rick Barnes and the Vols. Tennessee, 5 of these top 7 teams that are not them are on the road for Tennessee. They're playing Bama, Kentucky, and Vanderbilt all home and away. So those are all 3 tough teams. I think Vanderbilt is the team that people are a little bit less sure of, but there's a lot. I mean, Torvik really likes this Vandy team, and I think they've made some really solid additions in the transfer portal this year. So I think that Mark Byington team is going to be a good program. And even if they're just kind of mid-level in the SEC, Bama and Kentucky being the 2 teams that you have to play twice is pretty brutal. They also have Arkansas, Florida, and Mizzou on the road. The only teams that they get at home only that are, particularly noteworthy, Auburn is one of them, Texas and Texas A&M, but this is a tough schedule for Rick Barnes in Tennessee. I mean, they got the majority of their tough opponents are on the road. The majority of their quote unquote easier opponents are at home, which doesn't help them as much. So it's going to be a tough year. Obviously, this Tennessee team's got some high profile players coming in. They got one of the best freshmen in the country, but they also lost a lot of kind of their heart and soul in Zakai Ziegler. And I think it's going to be tough for Tennessee to be back in that conversation as a 2-3 seed, not only because of the roster turnover, but for the fact that this is a really tough schedule for them too.
Yeah, Andy, completely agree with you there. For my toughest, Andy, I cheated a little bit and I apologize for that. I'm choosing Auburn, who, look, they're 9th in the Torvik thing, but they're 32nd. I mean, come on, what are we doing? And they're coming off a 1 seed and get some of that back. So if you'll allow me, I'm going to choose Auburn as mine. And the reasons being, they get Torvik's top 5 in the SEC are Florida, Arkansas, Tennessee, Kentucky, Bama. Well, Arkansas and Bama, 2 of those 5, they have to play twice. Florida and Tennessee are road-only games. We talked last week about how it's like you want your road-only teams to be like the bottom of the barrel. That ain't it here, where it's not only Florida and Tennessee, but, they've got to go to Georgia only. They got to go Mizzou, OU, who are all kind of in that top tier as well. Out of that top 5, only Kentucky is home only. LSU and South Carolina, the bottom 2 teams, you would love to play them road or both, but they only get them at home only. And then Texas and Texas A&M are home only, and they're bottom half. So it's like, daggum, right? Like all of these teams we'd like to be playing potentially road only, we get at home only. And so, the schedulers did Bruce Pearl's team no favors coming off of being, for a lot of last season, the best team in the nation. Crazy stuff there. But as you said, no easy schedules in the SEC.
I'm not going to launch too far into my Auburn talk yet. I think we'll save that for our conference preview or team previews. But Auburn has been 32nd is not disrespect from Bart Torvik. I don't want to imply that it is, but I feel pretty confident in saying Auburn's not going to finish 9th in the SEC next year. Let me put it that way. But their tough schedule is not going to do them any favors. Moving on, I want to talk about the easiest schedule for me. And honestly, it was pretty easy for me to pick this one. It's Florida. It's the Gators. And again, no super easy schedules in the SEC necessarily, but Florida's got their home away matchups are Georgia, Kentucky, and South Carolina. Kentucky, obviously, the toughest out of those, but South Carolina's likely going to be the worst team in the SEC. Georgia's a team that I'm curious. There's some optimism around Georgia, but I'm not sold on them yet. I think realistically, 2 of the 3 teams that Florida's playing twice are going to be at or near the bottom of the SEC. And then for them, their road schedule's fairly easy. Again, comparatively, they got Ole Miss, Missouri, Oklahoma, Texas, A&M, and Vanderbilt. So they don't have the trickiest opponents that they're going to end up facing on the road. They got most of them at home. Bama, Arkansas, Auburn, Tennessee are 4 of their 6 home-only games. So that's a really tough quad of teams, but you get them all at home. And so I feel pretty good if I'm Todd Golden in Florida. And I think you want the benefit of the doubt a little bit when you're the defending champs. And I think they're absolutely getting that here with what looks like a fairly favorable schedule as they get into the SEC next year.
Man. Okay, Gators. There you go. Andy, I had trouble choosing between Mizzou and Oklahoma. And it's funny because both of them, the reason I had trouble choosing between them is because it was a very similar schedule between the 2. It's funny, of their home and away, they play each other home and away, so that kind of cancels out. They both have LSU and South Carolina away only. They both have Florida and Auburn home only, so it's kind of like, well, that easy and hard cancels out. They both have Kentucky away only, so that doesn't help. Ultimately, then I was like, okay, so what separates between these 2? And when I looked at that, I went Mizzou as my choice, but you could have easily pushed me to Oklahoma as well. Because yes, you have to play Arkansas twice if you're Mizzou. I get that. And Bama is road only, and that's difficult. But the only 4 outside of those, the only 4 road only games are 4 of Torvik's bottom 5, Andy. And then out of their other home and road, it's the 5th of those bottom 5. And so I look at that and I'm like, well, that's not too bad. I think it was either Mississippi. I think it's Mississippi State twice, but they get A&M, Ole Miss, LSU, and South Carolina all road only. And that's what you're looking for, man. And so that ultimately led me to go with Mizzou there as my choice for that. By the way, speaking of Ole Miss really quick, I had just seen on from Ole Miss's basketball account on Twitter, like their official account, that Coach Beard was on Locked On Ole Miss this week with Steven. So we need to go with Stephen Willis. So great poll by our great host of Locked On Ole Miss there. We need to go check that podcast episode out.
Well, we said it a handful of times already, Isaac, but there are not easy schedules in the SEC. But after Torvik's top 8 teams, which of the teams have a schedule that might be good enough to vault them into that top 8 conversation? We're going to get into that in just a second. But first, folks, the MLB season is heating up, and every game is bringing clutch hits, standout pitching, and unforgettable moments. From walk-off home runs to no-hitters in the making, there's no shortage of drama on the diamond, and no better time to get in on all the action. And FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before first pitch and live. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. We're looking SEC odds to win the 2026 National Championship. Florida has the highest odds in the SEC at plus 1,600, followed by Kentucky at plus 1,700, Auburn at plus 2,500. FanDuel likes them a little bit more than Torvik right now. And then Arkansas rounds it out, the top 4 at plus 3,000. Folks, if you are new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, Isaac, well, we talked about the hardest and easiest schedules in the SEC for those kind of top 8 teams, at least according to Torvik's preseason rankings. Now we're going to take a look at the bottom 8 teams. And again, it's the bottom is fairly relative in this case. We're going to talk about these teams and which ones have a schedule that might be good enough to kind of vault them into that top 8 conversation. Those teams, by the way, and like we said, they're all bunched up in Torvik's rankings. Auburn at 32, Georgia at 33, Texas at 35, A&M at 36, and Mississippi State at 39. Literally all those teams within 7 spots of each other. Then there's a little gap before you get to Ole Miss at 48, LSU at 67, and then a big gap, South Carolina at 105. Isaac, which of these teams do you think has a schedule that could be good enough to maybe vault them up a few spots, maybe even into the top 8 in this conference next year?
Yeah, and I think it's a balance, Andy. I don't remember if we talked about this last week or not, but it's like it's one thing if the schedule allows it to be, but is your team good enough, right? Like I'm not even looking at South Carolina's schedule to see. So the team I went with is Georgia here, Andy. And part of that is, yes, look, they've got to play Florida home and away both. I get that. But they get South Carolina, who you just mentioned, by far the worst team twice as well. So it's almost like that Florida and South Carolina cancels out in a way. Texas A&M, who's in this bottom 8 twice. But, man, a lot of their hardest games are home only. Alabama, Arkansas, Auburn, Tennessee, all home only games. That's not bad. That was 3 of that top 5, which again, I think Auburn will be higher than this in there as well, but their road only tilts are not bad. Kentucky's one of them, but then Andy, it's LSU, who's next to last, Mississippi State, who's 4th from last, Mizzou, Oklahoma, Vandy, and Mizzou, Oklahoma, Vandy are in that top 8, but it's like, it's just like that whole middle's a jumble, right? And so I don't think that's terrible for UGA, and I think they might be able to utilize that. Is their personnel strong enough? We'll see with that. I mean, Torvik's got them 33rd nationally, 10th in the SEC. And again, so that's the weirdness of this relative bottom 8 here. But I think Georgia's schedule there lends itself to it, Andy.
Yeah, I'm going with Ole Miss for my pick here, and I like the Georgia pick, and I'm surprised at how low Ole Miss is. I mean, again, 48th. Yeah,
agreed.
48th, but they are what, 14th? 14th in the SEC. This team got a 6 seed last year. And I know that they're replacing huge amounts of their roster. Basically, I think 5 of their 6, maybe even all 6 of their double-digit scorers from last year are gone. They've had a quality offseason. They've brought in some talented players. I think this team is going to end up being solid, and I think that their schedule is doing them some favors. They do not face Alabama, Florida, Arkansas, or Missouri on the road. They do not have to deal with any of those teams on the road. Again, Missouri is in that conversation as a top 8 team at Torvik right now. We'll see if Dennis Gates can get them up there. But I think it's pretty not debatable that Bama, Florida, and Arkansas are teams you're pretty happy that you don't have to face on the road. And then they also only face Kentucky, Tennessee, and Texas A&M once each. I know A&M is a team that's kind of outside that conversation right now. I've been pretty high on A&M, so I'd be happy to not have to face that team twice this upcoming season. Certainly Kentucky and Tennessee are teams that you're happy you don't have to face more than once this season as well. And then for their home and away for Ole Miss, it's Auburn, Mississippi State, and Vanderbilt. Again, Auburn's a team that's better than what the rankings are showing them at right now. Yeah. Mississippi State and Vanderbilt, we'll see. Mississippi State is obviously that's the rivalry element there, which always makes that a little bit tougher. But they're just ahead of Ole Miss in the rankings for the SEC right now. And then Vanderbilt, which again, even for Vanderbilt, like I think they're going to be a good team, but like you don't really fear playing at Vanderbilt the way that you might fear playing at other places, even if their team is not as good. And so I think that is a factor to consider here. I think Ole Miss is a team that they're going to be kind of right in that conversation for a top 10 team in the SEC, maybe sneaking into the top 8. And I think that being close to being in that conversation, they get a benefit here with their schedule being not as bad. And I think that might be enough to get them into that mix before the season's over.
Andy, one of the things you and I were both laughing about, and we came to this independently and then talked about it as we were doing show prep, is the insanity of Texas road only schedule. My goodness. It's funny looking at their home and away. I was like, oh, that's not too bad. Georgia, OU, Texas A&M. Okay. Makes sense to have OU and A&M as their permanent partners. And then UGA is the rotation this year. Home only, Florida. It's nice to get them home only. And then LSU, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, South Carolina, Vanderbilt. And when you do that, Andy, you realize like, hang on, there's a lot of really good SEC teams we haven't mentioned yet. And all that's left is away only games. And that means that they're going to play those teams away only. Listen to this group of 6: Alabama, Arkansas, Auburn, Kentucky, Missouri, Tennessee. Good grief. Missouri's probably the worst team out of that 6. And we're looking at them at, preseason 28 there at Torvik. I mean, that's insanity, Andy Patton.
Yeah, that's absolutely ridiculous. Welcome to the SEC, Sean Miller, right? Here's your schedule. Here's the challenge that you got to deal with right away. I'm very intrigued to see this Texas team. I'm very interested in them. We haven't talked a ton about them this offseason, and I'm excited to kind of dig into them a little bit more. But certainly if they don't do very well in the conference this year, not as well as expected, I'm not saying that you just write it off because of the schedule, but you take it into consideration because this is brutal for the Longhorns in Sean Miller's first year.
You know what? I misspoke, Andy. Auburn is the lowest ranked of those 6 at 32nd.
Which is arguably more depressing.
Okay, Andy, very quickly, because we got to get to our Friday facts section. We'll talk more in depth about this when we get to our SEC preview in the lead up to the year. But I just want to have an early, quick conversation about, is there any world in which this conference gets 14 teams into the NCAA tournament again? As we said, the top 14 of them are all top 50 preseason at Torvik. Andy, is that a remote possibility, or was that just a crazy anomaly last year?
I think it's a possibility. Sure. I think it's unlikely. I think it's more likely that they'll kind of settle into the like 10 to 12 range. Which could be concerning for teams like Mississippi State, maybe Ole Miss, maybe Texas with their schedule. But I would be surprised I'd be more surprised if it's under 10. Like if you told me it's either under 10 or it's 14, I'd probably say 14. But I think it's going to be like 11, 12, somewhere in there. I think it's worth pointing out that last year there were 6 SEC teams that made the tournament that were seeded 7 or lower. Those 6 teams went 1-5. In their first round game. The only team seeded lower than that won a game in the NCAA tournament was John Calipari in Arkansas. The Hogs obviously won a couple of games in the tournament, but outside of that, none of those other teams did well. I know Georgia lost, Vanderbilt lost, Mississippi State lost. There's a few others. Texas lost before they even got into the tournament to their now coach, Sean Miller at Xavier. So yeah, I think that's going to be held against them in some degree. Whether that's fair or not, as the rosters are turning over so dramatically, kind of remains to be seen. But I don't think the committee wants to put a bunch of teams in when last year the performance of those teams in that conference didn't do very well. The ones that were seated lower anyway.
And Andy, we alluded to it in the cold open, but the conference just beat up on itself the whole conference season. And so I think part of it is if they want any shot at it, they've got to have the same level of dominance as they did in the non-conference portion of the schedule. And so I would imagine we'd have a good idea by late December if this is going to happen or not. All right. Last week, Andy quizzed me on Friday. And so we're going to do that again. I was like, you know what? I want to take a turn at this. So today we've got the next edition of what I'm just going to call Friday Facts. Andy has no clue what's coming. And I can't wait to throw it at him. Coming up here in just a second. It's time for Friday Facts. I have no idea if that's what we're going to call it long term, but that's what I'm calling it today. I have no idea if we'll continue to do this long term, but I love it. And we would love for you to play along at home or in your car or stop mowing your lawn, and play along with us here. So, Andy, a pretty direct question for you. Your challenge, should you choose to accept, is to name the last 10 or the most recent national runners up.
Ooh.
So I'm not asking you to name the national champions, although naming those could be helpful in figuring out who they beat. And it's not the last 10 seasons, it's the last 10 tournaments. And I think you know why I have to specify it that way. Thanks a lot, you stupid COVID disease. But one helpful thing, Andy, is where we sit right now, COVID divides this 10 directly in half. So it's the 5 that have happened since COVID and the 5 that immediately preceded COVID. So Andy, go. I've got the list pulled up in front of me. So go in whatever order you want. If it's helpful to go chronological, if it's helpful to bounce around, we'll see what happens.
Okay. Well, let's start with Houston. Houston, obviously the runner-up last year to Florida. That's a very easy one. We can get there right out of the way. We got for the 2 UConn championships, we got San Diego State.
Yep.
And that was in 2023.
23. Yep.
Yeah, it was 23. Who did San Diego State beat? Purdue, of course. So we got Purdue and San Diego State, the 2 UConn championships.
Yep.
We have North Carolina in 2022.
Correct.
And then before that, since that's your team and we can spend some time being sad for your team, we're going to be sad for my team now in 2021 because that's Gonzaga. So those are easy ones for us to remember somewhat sadly. 2020 was COVID. We know that. COVID won and lost the championship. It covered all of it. We can say it was Dayton because let's just pretend that Dayton was honestly make the championship.
Like that was the Obi Toppin team. Florida. No, I'm sorry. Why did I say Florida? Kansas was really good. Yeah. And they faced off. Do you remember this in the Maui championship game?
Right. Yes, I do remember that.
So good.
Yeah. Man, that would have been such a fun championship if we'd gotten that, or even like a Final Four game. Yes. That would have been a blast.
Who else was going to be 1 seeds? I can't even think in real time.
I think Gonzaga was going to be a 1 seed.
That's right.
They had already won the WCC championship, so I think they were probably going to get a 1 seed. But yeah, I don't know. I'm actually not sure that team was that good, so I think they would have been like an Elite 8 team. But okay,
man.
Pre-COVID is going to be a little bit tougher because this is before I was covering the sport in this.
Okay. Context. Well, here, how about this? I'll buy you some time to think and I'll recap the most recent 5.
Yes, do it.
So Andy correctly got all 5 of those. This past year, Houston lost to Florida. The year before, Zach Edey and Purdue lost to UConn. The year before that, San Diego State lost to UConn. That one's maybe hard to remember from people because it's like, you had the first UConn year. You had I feel like FAU got the bigger buzz of those 2 mid-majors, but it was San Diego State in the national championship game against them. Wasn't really a game though, Andy, as we were. And that was, that's a special one for us because that was the first national championship in Locked On College Basketball's existence. So that's kind of cool. And then the 2 prior years to that, we have to own that both of our teams were on the losing side of it. Carolina dropping. They were up double digits at halftime and lost to Kansas. I was there in the building in New Orleans. That was painful. And the year before that was when that Gonzaga team was undefeated coming in, and then Baylor just blitzed that national championship.
Race. Badly.
Oh my gosh, that was crazy. COVID before that, and then Andy, that brings us to the back half. The 5 runners up prior to that, 2015 through 2019.
Well, I can tell you 2017 because it's also Gonzaga, and they lost to the team that you get to celebrate because that was North Carolina winning that championship. Kennedy Meeks was in fact out of bounds, but that's beside the point. So let's see. I know Virginia won. I'm trying to remember who they beat. I feel like North Carolina.
Remember what year was that Virginia won?
So Virginia won in 19.
Correct.
Because they lost to UMBC in 18. So Virginia won in 19. Was it Carolina that they beat?
It was not.
No,
I will
beat
say
Carolina though, right?
Do what?
Carolina lost one of these games. I feel
that's
like
correct. You are correct.
What year would it have been? They didn't lose.
I will tell you this. It was on what is probably now the most famous shot in championship history.
Right. It was the Jenkins shot. So that was Villanova.
Yep.
And that would have been 18. It would have been 18, right?
Nope. Although
16, 16.
There you go. Because
I had a 50-50 shot, but I was like, I know it was an even number. For some reason, I remembered that.
Yep. So it immediately preceded Carolina then beating Gonzaga. But yes, Nova won again in 18. So you got to figure out who they beat. Okay, going back to the Virginia in 19. I'll give you this. The coach of the losing team we have talked about by name on this show, but for a new school. In fact, it's his episode. On this episode. In fact, it's his second school. He's like, it wasn't this losing school and where he's at now. It was the school that lost to Virginia, then another school, and where he's at now.
It was A&M. It's A&M.
Nope, but that's the right state.
Tech. Duh. Sorry, I just said the wrong school. I was like, it's Chris Beard, but yeah, he didn't go to A&M. Texas Tech. Yes.
Texas Tech. Bingo.
I should have remembered that because that was probably the second best Gonzaga team ever, maybe third best, and Texas Tech took them down.
So you've got everything except 18 and 15.
15, I want to say, did Wisconsin make the championship?
There you go. That's it. Wisconsin is the runner-up. I
remember Wisconsin beating Duke. Obviously, that was a big deal.
No, Wisconsin beat Kentucky.
You're right.
And then lost to Duke in the championship.
Then lost to Duke. Yeah.
So that's the Wisconsin team with Sam Decker and
Kaminsky on that team.
Hey, what?
Kaminsky, was he on that team?
Kaminsky. I could see his face, but I couldn't pull his name. Yeah, Frank Kaminsky.
Yeah. Okay, so 18.
And then the team that Villanova beat, that head coach is no longer coaching. He retired. And the head coach there now was in the Final Four in one of these years that we just talked about as the mid-major that was the more looked at mid-major.
That was a very confusing hint, but it's Michigan.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, I figured it out. And honestly, I'm glad you gave me that hint because of all of these, that is the only one that genuinely does not even come to my mind. Like, every other one of these I would have remembered, but Michigan I completely blanked that Michigan team was in that championship. Sorry, Wolverines fans.
No, you know what's funny, Andy? I wanted to quiz myself on this too. I was like, if I'm going to ask Andy to do this, I'm going to see if I can do it. And that was the hardest one for me to pull. Not that Villanova won, but who they beat.
I think it's because when we think of Villanova winning a championship, we just remember that North Carolina game. And so the Michigan kind of disappears a little bit.
So, Andy, it's funny that the teams that you and I cover, Carolina and Gonzaga, were both on this list twice and both once in each side of COVID there.
Right. That is kind of funny. Yeah.
Good grief.
Yeah.
But there you go. Okay, Andy, great job, man. How'd you feel about that?
Yeah, that was fun. It was fun. These kind of things are fun. Like I said, it's nice to test my knowledge, especially kind of prior to doing the show where I got really far more invested in what we're covering. But I wonder who would be the teams that most others would struggle with. We both kind of missed Michigan. You mentioned San Diego State. I'd be interested kind of how many people would guess them, how many people would, like, I think Wisconsin would be memorable. And I think like the more recent ones would be memorable. I think Gonzaga for at least the Baylor season is memorable. I'm not sure how much the 17 season would be memorable. It's just interesting to see where people would struggle with this.
Yeah. I wonder if the 17 game, because it was such a weirdly officiated game that I wonder if it sticks out because of how ugly the second half was.
Yeah. I suspect that game is, like, you and I are very much like, I don't want to say biased, but we have our memory of that game is going to be different than the general population. But
Sure.
because it's sandwiched between the Nova games and then the Virginia kind of storyline with them and Duke, like, I feel like it's just kind of a weird one-off in the middle. And I bet it kind of gets lost for a lot of people.
Yeah, it very well may do so. Man,
I'd like to forget it, if I'm being honest. So
good grief. Yes.
Oh,
Well,
man.
Andy, these are fun. I think we should keep doing them. I don't know if others enjoy it, but we certainly have fun doing it. All right, gang, that's good. Andy, great job. Proud of your work.
Hey, thanks, man. I'm proud of my work too. Happy. I think we'll keep doing this Friday Facts. I think it's a lot of fun, especially in the off season as we kind of have some time to kind of look back and do some of these fun, different types of things. But folks, that is going to wrap it up for us today here on the Locked On College Basketball Podcast. I want to thank all of you who've made this show your first listen or your first watch of the day. Give a special shout out, of course, to those everyday listeners. Hope you all have a fantastic weekend. We're going to have some NBA draft coverage next week, potentially some conference realignment stuff coming your way as well. We'll see what other scheduling stuff, transfer portal, recruits, all that good stuff coming next week. But as always, we want to say apologies to the Lawyer family, even though we got Purdue correctly in this exercise. Let's go Wild, folks. Cheers to the Mick Bruins. Have a great weekend. And until Monday, peace out.